I've seen Sinners countless times. It was my comfort movie for most of 2025, and its entire concept and storyline touched me to my core. That I saw it like 6 times in the movie theaters, or seven, I think. After my first watch in theaters, I spent hours on TikTok. A lot of the videos I saw were people dissecting apart themes that so eloquently touched on the Black experience and how this movie ignited generations of Black people. Anyway, so after my super emotional sixth rewatch of the movie in 70 millimeter, there was something on my mind that I wanted to talk about. And that was the like not only an undercurrent in everything I've watched since then, but a constant in what I plan to argue is in every Black American's life. So in April of 2014, Paul Mooney released a stand-up special, A Piece of My Mind, where he stated,
"There's only two kind of black people in America today. You either running free or you running scared. How you running?"
I wanted to use that specific clip by Paul Mooney because one, he's my favorite comedian of all time, but also if you ask any Black American over the age of 60, they know that freedom isn't linear. And they also know that we're all running from something, whether it be an abusive ex or a bad diet. Some of us are running from bill collectors. I'm personally running from Sally Mae because I don't got it. But we're all running from something. And sinners used, or not like, and not literally, but the idea of freedom is an undercurrent in the movie. And so if you think about Smoke, Stack, Sammy, Mary, and Delta Slim, they're all looking for freedom from something. And so in this essay, I wanted to like talk about these ideas of liberation that these characters are running from, or maybe perhaps running towards. And so in order to answer that question, we first must ask, well, what does freedom even look like for Black Americans or Americans in general? In The Paradox of Blackness in African American Vampire Fiction by Jerry Rafiki Jenkins, he reiterates that there is an African American philosophical tradition that conceptualizes freedom as both a bodily and intellectual matter. In this view of freedom, the Black body can never be truly free until the Black mind is free. So, what I take from that is that there is no one idea of freedom that all encompasses what those of the Black American diaspora could agree on today, as there are layers to what one may want to free themselves from in an oppressive society. Every life is different, thus every object and consideration of freedom would be vastly different. But there is one underlying current that most of us agree on in terms of the Blacks. And that is that Black Americans are absolutely tired of white people. Full stop. So, through the main cast of characters of Sinners, I will explore what notions of freedom they subscribe to and how the elusive idea of true freedom is much harder to obtain as an American. Let's start with Sammy. We're introduced to Sammy not only as the first character on screen, but at a major transition point in his life. Unbeknownst to him, this will be his last day as an adolescent, for sure. This is the last time he'll be living in his parents' house and under their rule, the last time he'll do house chores, and presumably the last time he'll have a quota to pick cotton. On his way to spend the day with his cousins, he says to his father, "I want to be free all this for a day, Pop." That was my best. That was my best interpretation. Sammy wants to know what it's like to not live in the mundane box of a sharecropper and as a preacher's son. There are so many moments that lead up to him recognizing that there is no real freedom in this country, but there is the freedom of joy. He begs Stack to let him drive. And there's nothing more American, I could say, than driving for a teenager. It gives them the true sense of freedom. It's the fresh air, the wind, the open road. You feel like nothing is impossible and everything is open for you. It's one of the first steps that teens in America take towards independence. Throughout the movie, all of Sammy's constituents still see him as a young boy who can't make his own decisions. Smoke and Stack were deliberate about not telling him what happened to their father until he was of age. And it was only at Sammy's request that Stack finally told him that Smoke had killed their daddy. After the pivotal juke joint scene, Smoke sternly tells Sammy that he could not be a performer anymore, and even pulled a gun out on him to solidify his adult authority over him. Even in terms of his sexual prowess, when Sammy meets Pearline for the first time, she diminishes him as a boy, even though you can see that there's a sexual attraction there. It's only after his performance at the Juke that Pearline allows herself to view him as a man enough to engage in sexual acts. That's some weird. Because where's that lady's husband? My argument about Sammy's adolescence is that depending on when it was convenient, his title as a boy or as a man was interchangeable, and it was never him who was vocalizing his manhood. It was always someone doing it for him. Sammy's father had a stern disposition towards playing secular music and wanted him to fully integrate into the church. But Sammy battles with this decision for the entire movie, and it's made plain that he cannot do both. And he has to reckon with what parts of him are at risk if he leaves one over the other. Jenkins writes, African American Christianity is a consequence of ideological contestation between slaves and masters, not just an accommodation to slavery. Thus, for the all-American bourgeoisie Negro, being Christian not only reaffirms the cosmic significance of African Americans, but is also an African American cultural practice of resistance and freedom. Now, church in the Black community throughout history was one of the places that Black Americans built community, gathered and shared resources. For example, churches were used as schools or places to teach newly freed people how to read, how to strategize and navigate white supremacy, and how to dismantle it. A part of this is why people who leave the church, due to not aligning with the spiritual and religious beliefs, were still a part of the church culturally as it pertains to being a part of the community. So even if the church is to symbolize and stand as a place for resistance and freedom, it's no wonder Sammy had this mental battle. And even at the end of the movie, when he makes his ultimate decision to leave Clarksdale and the church, it is the very foundation of resistance and freedom that was instilled in him that helped him make that decision. He can never be fully free from the church because it is what shaped him. Speaking of shaping, let's get into a white girl. We're going to talk about Mary. Mary is first presented to the audience as a white woman with unfettered access to the ideal life of a woman of her stature in the 1930s. With her white husband who owns a house and a farm, she is set for life. She is good to go. At the same time, though, it's apparent that she covets not only a life with Stack, but a deep enrichment in the diverse community she grew up with in the 1920s. One that includes the likes of her mother and the twins. Unfortunately, with access to both pivotal relationships being revoked, Stack leaving her high and dry, and the passing of her mother, this leaves a hole open. And what is left for her now is the thing she's reckoning with. Mary covers the idea of belonging. It's why once she's turned into a vampire, she holds true to the idea of them all being a family, right? You know how, Mary, she here because she family. And when she gets bitten, she's like, we're not leaving without y'all. We family. Like, she was serious about that. Vampire or not, she's like, no, we tight. We tight. If we are to assume that Mary is running from anything, it's from the illusion of white safety, which means that she must usher in the erasure of everything that she knows about herself and her previous community under the lens of diversity. She will have to assimilate to a white ethno-state. She will have to present as a pure white woman. In A Chosen Exile, A History of Racial Passing in American Life, Allison Vanessa Hobbs writes, white skin functioned as a cloak in antebellum America, accompanied by appropriate dress, measured cadence of speech, and proper comportment. Racial ambiguity could mask one's slave status and provide an effectual strategy for escape. Many runaway slaves neither imagined nor desired to begin new lives as white. They simply wanted to be free. As literary critics P. Gabriel Foreman and Shireen Sherrard Johnson have written, fugitive slaves passed through whiteness. And once through, they would reject rather than embrace the power and superiority whites claimed as their singular possession. Tactical or strategic passing passing temporarily with a particular purpose in mind, was born at this moment out of a dogged desire for freedom. Unfortunately, having Mary around was a major danger for all of them, and it's made evident by how much Smoke wants her out of the juke. He said, get rid of her. I want to go. Actually, Smoke didn't want any white people or white passing people up in his spot. He said no. As a matter of fact, because he knew that they could bring trouble. Jenkins, he did not want them up in there. Okay, he said no. It's a no for me, dog. Jenkins writes, if the path to the American dream has been and continues to be on the backs of blacks, then it is also the case that audiences of black bodies in pain do not learn anything about the people experiencing pain. Rather, they learn, among other lessons, how that body can be exploited to achieve the American dream. As King writes, the constant truth about interpretations of Black pain in America is that Black people disappear while their bodies are constantly renewed as memorials to suffering and as tools for lessons benefiting systems of American acculturation. Now, I'm aware that race is a social construct and seen as hierarchy for others. And while in today's time in society we have the language to talk about this objectively, I want to make it clear that yes, even though she is white passing and has some black ancestry, this is all a scheme set up by Todd. Okay? That's his fault. Now, as much as Mary didn't want to be, I didn't want to be white. I wanted to be with you. Girl, anyway, as much as Mary didn't want to be white, her whiteness and the idea of it could bring some financial relief to the Juke. And this is what got them all turned into vampires, unfortunately. 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 It is the ignorance of how her whiteness plays a part in the destruction of that night that constantly goes over most people's heads when this topic is up for discussion. As much as Mary wants freedom from her whiteness, she will inherently always be white because one, genetics, right? Yeah, like girl, like if you said the N word, I'm stealing off in front of you, like full stop. Like what the but two, she has not fully recognized her whiteness is a weapon. We'll get it more into her when I get to her homeboy stack, but I'm gonna just stop it right there for right now. And we're gonna move forward to one of my favorite characters in this movie, and that is Delta Slim. Now, when we meet Delta Slim off rip, you can tell that he is depressed. And just, I want to shout out like Delroy Lindo, outside of just him acting, like the physicality of Delta Slim, how you can tell that he jokes through his pain. That's how he kind of like handles his, and I'll get into this, his depression. Excellent actor, excellent actor. Anyway, we meet Delta Slim at what one could consider to be a low point in his life. One could even argue that he's severely depressed. With a heavy drinking problem and a blase attitude toward his own life, Delta Slim has resigned himself to his vices in order to get along. It's only after, it's only after he's presented with some Irish beer and a hefty paycheck for the night that we see a spark of who he used to be. His true joy comes alight, if you will, when he's excited about, I'm about to make $40 tonight and I'm about to be drinking all the Irish beer I can stand and with take. He's the light even is shines in his eyes. Good God, Delroy Lindo should have gotten the Oscar. The Oscars, you will pay for your crimes. You will pay for your crimes. He should have won Best Supporting Actor. I know it, you know it, your homies know it. You can really tell that music makes him come alive. It's why he's so passionate about the blues and its history. You know, when he tells Sammy, you know, this music came with us from home. You can tell that he's a true historian in the sense of the musicality of African Americans at that time. As Delta Slim recounts the lynching of his buddy Rice, a whole new perspective for his backstory is revealed to us, and it's no wonder that Delta Slim is drinking himself into an early grave each night. I can't even imagine like how many night terrors did he have thinking about his friend's murder and castration, and how does one even move forward with life when someone you know and love has experienced something so traumatic? Jenkins writes, although American culture has a long history of conceptualizing Black men in relation to the feminine, The practice of lynching and castrating black men reveals that the black male's threat to white masculine power arises not simply from a perceived racial difference, but from the potential for gender sameness. In the eyes of lynchers and castrators, black men are a threat to white masculine power in America because of their bodies. Therefore, to assume that distance from Africa affects the level of one's blackness is to ignore the fact that one's identification as a black man in America is confirmed by one's body. My conclusion of Delta Slim and his part in all of this is that he wanted to be free of his trauma. The thought of how he lost his friend is on constant replay. You think about losing someone so traumatic that way, there's not a day that could possibly go by, especially in 1930s America, without you thinking about that. And it's hard to escape these atrocities when you are bound to see them every day. Like when all of his prisoner friends are working in the field and he knows all of them. He knows all of them. Those was all his homies. The reminder is everywhere because no matter where he goes, he will still experience some sort of racism. So he drinks himself blind every night. There is no freedom, which is why he was willing to sacrifice himself so that Sammy could escape. A 2-for-1 deal, if you will. He gets a chance to save his friend, someone who he knows has the musicality to continue to pass the torch along, but he no longer has to live with the pain of being depressed and a suppressed black man in 1930s America. Now let's get to Smoke and Stack. As a unit, it was really rough to write this script about them. So I've got a segment with them together, and then I've got a segment of them by themselves. Just so you know, like you're not like tripping, like, didn't you just talk about them? Like, yeah, I did. But I'm talking about them as a unit first, and then I get into their separate things. Now, the audience is introduced to Smoke and Stack after they return from Chicago. And it's been years since they've been in the Delta, and it's implied that they initially both left for a better life and to explore where they could place their roots. Two sides of the same coin, Smoke and Stack have so many layers to them in terms of what they wanted for their lives and what they wanted to escape from. Smoke, who is the oldest twin, is very stern, okay? He's not playing no games with you, mom. Almost cuss. He's not playing no games with you. Okay, he never smiles. He's all business. He handles the numbers as well as doing what I would call a lot of the handiwork. And I'm using quotation marks here, but you know he's getting the job. Let's get down to business. That song was about Smoke. On the flip side, we have Stack, who has this jovial personality. I think he's a ladies' man for real, for real. He's constantly seen smiling, joking, and engaging with people. He would easily be the face of the duo, but in order to explore them, we must explore what shaped them and their personalities and how they move about the world, not only as a team, but as individuals. We both know that the twins' daddy used to beat them real bad, but we also know that their mother died giving birth to them. And as we don't have much background on their father except for him being an evil man, I have to make a strong hypothesis here and state that the trauma from the beatings that they experienced as children could be correlated with their tumultuous upbringing. I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying this is a very real possibility. The only reason I'm making this strong hypothesis is because it's stated like 3 times in the movie. This is leaving them under the tutelage of the likes of Mary's mother to raise them. In Slavery, Fatherhood, and Paternal Duty in African American Communities over the long 19th century, author Libra R. Hild writes, Jim Crow conditions and the psychological damage of slavery undermined some men's aptitude as fathers. John Smith cited the negative example of slaveholder behavior and claimed his father, quote, believed in whooping like the white folks did. He cut the blood out of me with a switch and scarred me up, and I left him, unquote. When former slaves criticized bad fathers, they compared them to slaveholders, invoking the most negative example they had of abdication of masculine responsibility. A man who abused when it was within his power to protect behaved like a slaveholder, and in doing so, violated Black communities' sense of paternal duty. Their only idea of their father is this evil man. Hell, the entire community in the next town over only knows him as an evil man. So his reputation clearly precedes him. And I'm reminded of the scene where Stack and Sammy are driving out in the fields And then Sammy asks Stack whatever happened to their father. And Stack tells him that Smoke killed him. And he notes that he got most of the beatings from his father. But, and I quote, he ain't mean it. And so by stating that his father didn't mean to hurt him, it's implied that Stack has forgiven his father for his transgressions, which is a really stand-up thing to do, and I think even harder to do once a parent has passed away. Smoke, on the other hand, seems to harbor this energy of his father in a different way. As the twin that actually killed his father, his coldness shows up strongly in the scene where Smoke has decided for Sammy. They didn't talk. He decided for Sammy, mind you, that he wasn't going to be performing at any more jukes up in town, and that if he did, he'd kill him. And it's implied here that Smoke has harnessed his authority, unbeknownst to him, to reflect his father's aggressive manners and how he moves in relation to how he treats his loved ones. Because why would you threaten to kill your cousin if he said he want to do a little bit of singing up and down? You know, he said, I just want to, he just want to, he just want to be in somebody's arm for the night. And you gonna say, listen, I'm glad you had fun tonight or whatever, but if you do this again, I'm gonna kill you dead. Like, what the oh God, they're strict in this. Anyway. So anyway, outside of fatherhood trauma, our twin boys seem to veer off into separate ideas of what freedom looks like for them, even though they are coming together to do a lot of their hooting and hollering. Let's see how their roads diverge. Let's start with Stack. Stack is a boy. That's a bold statement I just said. And what I mean to say is that Stack has been over parentified by his older brother and thus has a very hopeful and opportunistic view of the world. All of his choices prove that there is some sort of logical arrested development there. And we can talk about that on another time and another date, okay? But let's start with his first choice, which is persuading Smoke to open the juke that night. Now, what could have possibly happened had they just opened it the next day? It's possible to say that no one would have died. That's for damn sure. But we can't put that on Stack, all right? There are a lot of other variables that happened that night. So I'm not going to blame it all on him, but just keep that in mind as I go along in this segment. Okay, so let's talk about his second choice and how he verbally accosts Mary at the train station. All right, now let's get into it. Mary recounts for us how he laid the pipe down, secure pipage, if you will, and then left in the middle of the night without a single word, only to pop up years later around the same time her mother, which also was his caregiver throughout adolescence, they don't show up to the funeral and they don't show up with no flowers. And he accosts her at the train station saying, well, I don't know why you here. I did what I was supposed to do. Get the F around me. Oh, straight up boy. Straight up boy. In the book Manliness and Its Discontents, The Black Middle Class and the Transformation of Masculinity, 1900 to 1930, author Martin Summers writes, Black men and women who came of age in the years surrounding World War I began to reject the stultifying ideas and values that structured their parents' claims to respectable middle-class status. This attitude included a repudiation of bourgeoisie ideals of manliness. Many younger Blacks opposed the association of manhood with the marketplace and consequently spurned the idea that they had to pursue a traditional middle-class career. They became ensconced in consumer culture through rent parties, cabarets, and in general, the jazz scene. The evolution of entertainment industries, particularly the theater and cabaret, blurred the lines between private and public social activity, as well as encouraged more intimate interaction between men and women. Along with the emergence of motion pictures, these forms of entertainment legitimized leisure and public consumption of food, alcohol, and indirectly, sex among the middle class. Patterns of courtship changed as well, as women began to assert themselves within the public arenas of work and politics. Sex and marriage became the means to personal happiness rather than the ends of obligation and duty. As such, middle-class youth participated in new rituals such as dating, parties, and premarital sex in order to achieve the goals of both personal fulfillment and self-gratification. Now, as smooth and as debonair as he is, Stack cannot make a solid decision for himself, nor does he have a strong of a backbone to stand up for himself. I think it's why he was the perfect first victim inside the juke, okay? Okay? Because Stack couldn't get a hold of his emotions. He got Mary involved in the financial business of the juke when it literally had nothing to do with her. And she was like, okay, well, what's wrong? What do we gotta do? You wasn't even in here when we set this motherfucker up to be a juke. Them as a unit, they enraged me, they pissed me off. Because Stack couldn't get a hold of his emotions, he got Mary involved in the financial business of the juke when it literally had nothing to do with her. He also allowed her to go out there by herself with three suspicious looking white people on account of wanting to keep the juke out of debt. Boy, why would you send your girl, well, not your girl, right? Like, but basically your girl. Like, why would you send her out there by herself? Everybody inside the juke, everybody like, oh, these white people outside, they looking hella suspicious. He didn't put his head in the door or nothing. You know what I'm saying? Like he didn't even tell Cornbread, who was sitting at the door, to check to look. Hey, look out for Mary. She about to go talk to some weird ass white people over there. Just make sure everything. Like, let me get back on script because I'm getting upset. Basically, Stack is the follower of the duo. And I do believe it is his biggest downfall of the movie. Now, I know you might be saying downfall, but he lived until the end. I'm like, okay, but like at what cost? I mean, yeah, he got his milk of magnesia, but his brother is gone and he can't see the sunrise again. I don't know if I would call that living. I don't know if I would call that winning. I don't see it like as a like he up. Maybe he's not down. Maybe he's just in the middle. I don't really call it a win. Stack is a frustrating character for me. Can you tell? Anyway, let's move on to his brother Smoke. Now, Smoke, who is arguably my most favorite character in the movie, is complex in a way that I find to be so delicious. He's masculine when he needs to be, but is always, and I mean always, gentle with Annie. Even before we meet Annie, we get a glimpse of Smoke in his gentleness when he asks the little girl to watch his truck while he goes into the store. It's like these small standout moments that let us into who Smoke is when he's not wearing the mask of protector and big brother and decision maker. The first intimate moment we have with Smoke is when he presents flowers to his baby's grave. Like a moment that was just between him and his child from the afterlife is so sweet and tender, but that you can't help but feel the emotion on screen. He and Annie losing the baby, as stated later in the same scene, is why it took him so long to return to Clarksdale in the first place. His hesitancy to return at all has layers to it. And I imagine like what emotions could arise or would arise once you return to a place where you experience not only some of the worst abuse in your life, but also where you found love, but also lost a child. And so it's no wonder when Smoke says to Annie in the shop, it still hurts coming back here, but I love you and I miss you. Oh my God. This idea of returning for what you love, even though the pain still exists there, shows that love is stronger than hate. And Smoke could have easily never returned, right? He could have put out of his mind all the things his father did to him, the love he found with Annie, and the death of their child, and essentially just started a new life in Chicago or whatever it is that they was planning on going. Which is what a lot of young men did in that time in order to escape Jim Crow and Jim Crow laws. But I like to argue that in doing so, he would no doubt end up like his father. And it's in moments where we spend our lives trying not to end up like someone that we actually end up just like them. Towards the end, when Smoke removes his mojo bag, he is tired. And not just from whooping ass, even though whooping ass is a tiring exercise, but he's resigned himself to go where he knows his love will be, no matter what ancestral plane it's on. Killing the clan was his last act of defiance before he went to settle down. And I think like his fear of love, he overcame that by allowing himself to go and be with his wife and his child. Speaking of his wife, Annie, she is the only character in the movie who can quite literally say, it is what it is. Annie is the only character in this movie that has really given me a run for my money. And I don't think that's a mistake. As a matter of fact, I know it's not. Because when we think of those who practice hoodoo and or ancestor veneration, it is always a closed practice. Those who practice know all about opening portals and dealing with good and evil spirits. So it makes sense that I wouldn't find much knowledge about these practices as it is passed down verbally, person to person, and only in circles of communities that have done the work. Throughout the entire movie, Annie's demeanor is the calmest in the movie. We never hear her yell or see her act out of character. Her moves are always intentional. She knows what she will and will not agree to do, and she is firm in her decisions. When we first meet her, she is already armed with questions about Smoke's surprise return. Because what you mean? How you and Stack get enough money to have them to let them crackers sell you a whole meal? How? How'd you guys get that money? How, Sway? She said, I can smell this bullshit from a mile away. And did. She even justifies that his return is suspicious. All of this clues in on the idea that Annie does not suffer from the same delusion of freedom as the other characters in the movie do. Jenkins writes, there is an African American philosophical tradition that conceptualizes freedom as both a bodily and an intellectual matter. In this view of freedom, the Black body can never be truly free until the Black mind is free, since one's biology dictates one's center and destiny. The problem with non Afrocentric African Americans is that they are not listening to what their bodies are telling them to think, do, and desire. Annie's outlook on life is this is what life is now. I use what I was born with and the tools that I was taught from my grandmother to make the best out of what I have here and now. And this philosophy is why she wasn't hesitant to pull a knife out on Smoke when he snatched her money away. She knew that she was never leaving Clarksdale, that there would never be more peace than what she was experiencing in the now. She inherently knew that no matter where you went in America, you couldn't free yourself from its ugly faces. And the idea of freedom is you making the best of what you have now. This is why she knew that if she was turned, she wouldn't want to stay alive and had Smoke promised to kill her. She already knew. She was firm in her decisions. What a character. Love Annie. For a while, I wrestled with how I wanted to end this video essay. I've been sitting on this for like 6 months now. I'm so sorry. And it's been a journey reading and researching ideas on freedom and what it looked like to Black Americans in the 1930s and juxtaposing that idea of freedom to what it would look like today. I did a lot of reading and I did a lot of reflecting. And I came across this amazing book, and I want to read a quote from you all. The author is Eddie S. Glaude Jr., and it's from his 2026 release, America USA, How Race Shadows the Nation's Anniversary, in the chapter titled, Freedom is the White Man's Gift. This is the source of what the historian Carol Anderson calls white rage, that allergic reaction to the demand for Black freedom and the ongoing resistance to white domination. Rage directed toward that figure who refuses either to submit or forgive. If storybook America is to hold, the one way to another the nation's sins must be wiped clean, either by confession or by violence, both real and symbolic. White rage justifies the undoing of any effort to resolve the warring souls of America and to live genuinely the American promise. Here, in the hands of those who cry sentimental tears, freedom remains white America's possession to give. And when white America tires of the effort, they work with passion and rage at getting shut of the problem by any means necessary. What matters here, what has always mattered in America USA, is that the country simultaneously remains a beacon of freedom and a white nation. But since the beginning, the presence of Black people and Native peoples has unmasked the lies that hide the doubleness. That deceit became the source of our national suffering because white Americans had to lie to themselves and to the world about their commitment to liberty and equality for all. So, in conclusion, whether or not freedom is real for Black Americans, not really, dog. Like, yes, we are free in certain ways, but there are so many things still holding us back. And I don't think a video essay was needed for you, the viewer, to know that. I just wanted to like expound on this idea of like what are things that we as a community run from um, and how that affects how we move about the world. In 1975, Toni Morrison stated, the very serious function of racism is distraction. It keeps you from doing your work. It keeps you explaining over and over again your reason for being. Somebody says you have no language and you spend 20 years proving that you do. Somebody says your head isn't shaped properly, so you have scientists working on the fact that it is. Somebody says you have no art, so you dredge that up. Somebody says you have no kingdoms, so you dredge that up. None of this is necessary. There will always be one more thing. You know, Miss Morrison, I tend to agree. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. I'm going to put up a screenshot of all the books, as well as, put them in the description box of everything that I used and read and researched here. I want to say a special thank you so much to Jasmine Bell and Naomi McQueen for helping me. They're the two of the smartest women I know to read over my script over and over, and I got on their nerves about it, but they were so gracious enough to read and kind of help steer me in ways where I was stuck in this. And I also want to thank one more person. I think her name is Let Me Be Beautiful, or Let It Be Beautiful on Instagram. I can't find a screenshot on my phone, and her views on this were so beautiful, and I asked her if I could credit her, so I want to make sure that I credit her as well. Please let me know if you enjoyed this kind of video. I have a few more ideas of other things that I want to talk about, and so please comment, share, subscribe, and all the good things. Let me know how you enjoyed this, and also give me your opinion. Let's have a discussion. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. I don't know how long it's going to be, but I appreciate you for staying. It's 12 midnight. I'm going to bed now. Love you so much. Thank you again. Bye.